You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective, and
Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. I'm your host, Mike Morford. Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderMyFam or on Facebook at facebook.com/TMIMF podcast. If you'd like to support The Murder in My Family and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated. And thank you to all of the supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note, please support any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family, the way that those sponsors support the show. It's with our sponsor support that this show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to this new episode of The Murder in My Family. In this episode, it's going to be a little bit different. I have my friend Eric on, and he's a past guest on the show. Eric Carter-Landin, how have you been?
Hey Mike, I've been doing very well, been very busy, but excited to be here tonight with you.
Yeah, this is going to be a memorable episode for some different reasons that we'll get into. And just a reminder for listeners, Eric was on episode 94, I think it was, to talk about his baby brother, Jacob, who was killed in 1987, and his killer, for a variety of reasons, somehow hasn't been held accountable for his death. If you haven't listened to Jacob's story, go back and listen to it. It's very moving. And one result, I think, of this entire ordeal is that Eric has become very driven. He started out doing a podcast, and then he's done some really good advocacy work. And I know, Eric, as a result, you were pretty busy doing a lot of different stuff. Can you just sort of recap your resume and what you've been working on and all the ways that you're getting involved in helping people and helping families like the ones we talk about on the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a family member who's been out there fighting for justice for 37 years, I really felt like coming into true crime with True Consequences, which I started in 2019, that there was a lot of opportunity for true crime to be changed for the better, in my opinion. I think that there is a great potential within true crime to do a lot of good. And so that's been a little bit of my guiding philosophy as I navigated learning how to create a podcast, how to produce it, learning how to interview people, and all the things that you kind of have to figure out. It has always been at the top of my mind that I wanted to do more beyond just telling these stories. Because telling the stories definitely helps, especially if it's an unsolved case. It helps to get more awareness, and more awareness could lead to political pressure that sometimes is needed to drive cases forward. And so True Consequences became a platform really focused on helping families in New Mexico that are fighting for justice, and to give them a platform to be able to tell their story in their words, which is very similar to what has happened with this show, Mike. And so it's definitely been an interesting experience, but I'm always asking myself, what else could I do? What else could I do? How else can I be making an impact? And so a couple of years ago, my mom and I created a nonprofit called Angels Voices Silence No More. I'm the president of the board. And the whole purpose of that organization is to help families fighting for justice or looking for their missing loved ones. We provide funds to families for things like funeral expenses, private investigations, DNA testing, even counseling expenses to deal with the grief of that kind of loss. So it's been awesome to be a part of that and to get that organization off the ground and really start to see it make an impact. But then again, here I am, like, what else can I do? So I co-founded a annual conference called AdvocacyCon, which has been created to specifically connect families with resources that they need when they're looking for justice or for their missing loved ones. So there will be nonprofits, content creators who help families. There's going to be lawyers, counselors, people to help them review their cases. We've got Natalie Holloway's mom coming to give a talk on hope. We've got Sarah Turney and Julie Murray coming to talk about how to leverage the media. So there's so much stuff happening with AdvocacyCon. So that's kind of like the high level overview. It was a lot, but I've got my hands on a lot of things.
So you're not slacking. You're keeping busy.
I'm definitely keeping busy for sure.
Yeah, and you talk a little bit about some of the important stuff, sort of behind the scenes about all these families that don't have a playbook of what to do when something happens to them, when something happens to a loved one. And, that was sort of the premise of the show, is that we hear headlines about people that have gone through these horrible circumstances. It's usually like a 2-minute blurb in the news, but you don't really know what happened behind the scenes, what the family had to deal with early on, and then later on to get justice, or years later trying to get justice, like somebody in your shoes. So I think all these things that you're looking to do behind the scenes are just, very important, and really, stepping up to help people in need. Because I think when people consume true crime, they don't think of the actual people sometimes that are being discussed. They're sort of characters in the story almost, but you don't really think these are real people with real lives, and they've been affected. And so this kind of work that you're doing is really amazing.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think it's really important to humanize the victims in these cases that we talk about in true crime. And for the longest time, that hasn't been the case. To your point, they kind of become a footnote in their own story. And I think that that's wrong. And I think that needs to change. And it's something that I'm constantly talking about. It's something that I won't shut up about until it changes. But honestly, what drives me is knowing what it felt like and what it feels like to be in my shoes with my mom, and not wanting anybody else to ever feel that.
Yeah, and that's, again, when you're talking to people, versus somebody like me that hasn't lost somebody in a terrible way that you have, you can bring it from a perspective that not a lot of people can. So I think there's some real sincerity there, and some real honesty there that comes from you, of someone that's gone through that.
Thank you. I think it definitely helps the family members that I've talked to with True Consequences to feel a little bit more at ease, as much as they can in that situation. And so I do get a lot of information that I'm not certain that everybody would get. And I think that really it comes down to just having that level playing field between, the person across the desk from me and myself, and really just looking them in the eye and being able to say, I understand what you're going through. and here's some of the things that have worked for me. And if you ever need anything, I'm going to be here to answer those questions. And I think that helps to build trust, right? And it helps the families to feel like they're being taken seriously and that they're not being taken for a ride.
Sure. And that you can maybe provide them some advice, as somebody that's gone through certain things, gone down certain roads, maybe, things that work, things that don't. So the advice you can give to somebody and the resources you can provide them with is really tremendous. So while you've been busy on your path, building everything that you can to help people, I've sort of been working on this show, and, it's been 150 episodes, 150 some odd episodes. And you and I talked a little bit before this point, but, I mentioned to you that with each of these cases I talked to, each case I've covered, I've taken a little piece of those cases with me, and they've really begun to weigh on me. The stories of all these lost people and shattered families and stuff, it's really taken something from me along the way. And just open up to listeners, it became tough for me to commit to doing the Murder in My Family. Earlier this year, I felt so drained from all these cases. And I don't want to say I was depressed. Maybe I was depressed. I don't know. I'm somebody that sort of bottles stuff in, but I just sort of felt like I was, I can't even explain what I felt, but basically after 150 episodes, I just didn't think that I could really do the show anymore. But, the more I thought about it, all the families that have allowed me to tell their stories and opened up to me, I realized that the show provides a platform for people maybe to share their unsolved case, as you mentioned, to generate tips and leads, or it's a platform that gives somebody a voice to talk about their experiences, maybe in a therapeutic type of way, or sometimes they want to help others. If they tell their story, it'll help others that are going through the same thing. So, after considering all that, I felt that ending the show would be taking that platform away, and I didn't want to do that because I know that it does help people. So I began thinking, is there anyone in the world that would be capable of hosting this show and willing to do it to keep this show going? And the only person I could think of in the world that was really Eric. So I reached out to Eric and I told him that I was thinking of this and shared with him a bit of what I was going through at the time. And after some consideration, Eric agreed that he would be willing to take over hosting the Murder in My Family going forward. And, I can't tell you how happy I was that he said yes, because as I mentioned, I just can't think of anyone else that I would have trusted to hand the seat over other than Eric. And I think he will really do an amazing job. So, once again, I just want to thank you personally, Eric, because I think to keep the show going means a lot to me, but I think it's going to mean a lot to other people and listeners.
And honestly, Mike, it means a lot to me, honestly, because there's been so many chances or so many things that have come up where families have asked me to cover their cases, and I've had to say no because of where they're located. And so this gives me an opportunity to do even more beyond my kind of smaller focus on New Mexico. And it doesn't mean I'm going to stop focusing on New Mexico. I'm still going to keep going with True Consequences. It's going to kind of roll into part of the Angels Voices nonprofit. So there will be more stories from the families that we're helping and that we're helping to fund things for, just to make it more of a well-rounded thing there. And so this gives me an opportunity that I'm very excited about, which is to help people outside of New Mexico and to help bring those voices and those stories to life for the listeners. So I want to thank you, Mike, for thinking of me. It's a huge honor. I feel very blessed to have met you and to know you, and that you thought of me first when this came up. And I'm very excited to be working on this show.
Yeah. And again, I thought of nobody else but you. And if it wasn't you, I don't know that the show would have gone on, but for anyone that's listened to Eric on any of his shows, any of his guest spots that he's done, he's very compassionate. He's very genuine. He's focused on the victims. Some great qualities. So maybe going forward, you're going to get something with this show that, I wasn't able to give, because I don't have the same perspective and the same experiences as Eric does. So maybe we can let listeners know what's going to change, what's not going to change, and what you're thinking moving forward, Eric. Maybe let the listeners know about.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think my voice is about an octave higher than yours, so that's definitely going to change. But I think that what's not going to change is the mission and the focus of the show, which is to provide this platform to families to be able to tell their story, whether it's to help them get justice or to, help them spread the word for other people to learn from their stories, or whatever their motivation is. That's going to continue. And I think that what listeners could expect, if they haven't heard me before, is really an empathetic approach. And I'm not saying that you're not empathetic, Mike, but I think that it comes off differently from somebody, like I said, who has been in those shoes and who understands what it's like. So it's more of, I really actually do understand what they're dealing with. And I know that that's a different perspective from where you're coming from. That's not to say that you don't care, because I know that you do. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be feeling the way that you've been feeling after doing 150 episodes. So I definitely understand that, but I think that we can expect to hear kind of the same style of episode as much as we can keep it the same style. And it just is a different voice with a little bit different perspective. I don't anticipate major changes. I think we're keeping the theme song and everything else the same. Even the intro, I believe, is going to be relatively the same. So it'll still be the same show that the listener has grown to love over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And, I think, obviously we're not looking too far out. We're just trying to get going and get started, sort of reset here. But the schedule looks like it's going to stay the same for now. And, a variety of different cases. Obviously, with the work you're doing, you're going to have a lot of people singing your praises and probably wanting to speak with you. And so you're going to hear a variety of different topics and different guests, I think, going forward on the show.
Yeah, and I do think that there will probably be a little bit more of, New Mexicans that I may be working with to try to help them get their stories out there. It's not going to become True Consequences, but I do think that there are some cases that really need some more attention. And so I'll be handpicking some of those to bring forward on the show, but we'll also be working with, like I said, families from all around the country. Well, if there's a family, that has a case that maybe happened in the US and they want to get more ears on it, but they're in the UK or they're somewhere else, I think it's worth talking to them to get those listeners' attention on these cases.
Any kind of international cases that we can cover, we're happy to help people wherever it may be.
Absolutely. And I think that we'll just be ready to help whoever comes forward. So if there's anyone listening that needs help with their case, feel free to reach out. You can reach out directly to me or to Mike. I know my email is eric@trueconsequences.com, but we would love to help anybody that is looking for that.
Yeah. And of course, you can always email the show to themurdermyfamily@gmail.com. It's going to be interesting to see how things go and see how people respond. And I think, based on what I know of you and what I've heard, that it should be a very positive response, and you're a very genuine and friendly person that I think everyone will be happy to talk with. And it'll be interesting to see what people you do get to come on the show and talk with you and how the conversations go.
Absolutely. And I'm definitely a big fan of making episodes compelling. You don't have to be salacious to make something compelling. I think that there are different ways to be compelling. So I I think the listener can look forward to a compelling story that's going to hopefully get them inspired to take whatever call to action is needed in that moment.
So I just want to sort of plug what you've got coming up and the dates if you have them handy. What do you have in the way of like AdvocacyCon and everything?
Yeah, so AdvocacyCon is going to be in March of 2025. It's the last weekend of March, March 28th through the 30th, I believe. So it'll be Friday through Sunday. It's going to be in Indianapolis at the Marriott Indianapolis East. Like I said, we've got Beth Holloway, we've got Julie Murray and Sarah Turney coming. We've got some content creators like Justin from Generation Y, Nina from Already Gone, who I think we both know. It's going to be an incredible conference. We're in talks with some other powerful nonprofits and potential speakers that I can't talk about yet because we haven't officially had our agreements signed, but we're very excited to be bringing this conference to life, and there's going to be more and more details coming out as we get closer.
Very cool. So obviously going forward, as you start putting out more episodes of The Murder of My Family, you'll be able to tell everyone what's going on, where to go, and help them find their way to you, and hopefully you can help them and do the advocacy work that you're doing and reach more people that way.
Absolutely. And if you want information, what is available it can be found at advocacycon.com. All that information is there. Information on tickets, who's coming, who's speaking, all that good stuff.
And what we'll do, obviously, too, we'll put links to find Eric's social media and everything in the show notes going forward, starting with this episode, and then episodes going forward, you'll be able to just click on the links and find everything Eric's doing and make it easier for you. So that should be very helpful to help listeners find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that and continue doing that.
So next episode with Eric solo is 2 weeks from now. Do you know which case you're doing yet?
I do. It is the case of Zachariah Jawan Shorty, who went missing under mysterious circumstances, and he was later found, unfortunately, deceased in the desert in New Mexico. His mom is a fierce advocate. She has been really out there talking to lawmakers, doing protests, doing marches, and just doing everything she can to get her son's case out there to hopefully get some justice for him. So she's an inspiring woman. I think it's going to be an incredible episode, or could be 2 episodes, depending on how the edit works out. But I think the listeners will definitely be interested to hear this case in particular, just because it's so mysterious and there's literally hardly any information in terms of like who could potentially be responsible. And I think the family just really needs help getting the word out.
Well, sounds like an interesting episode, and hopefully one that you can help make a difference on, and maybe generate some interest, some tips, leads, things like that. In a case where there's not much known, any little bit of information can help.
Yeah. And that's not to say there aren't suspicious people involved. There definitely are, but there's really no like hard evidence enough to say absolutely this person did something.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to the episode. I'm going to look forward to all the episodes. And again, Eric, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I'm excited to see what the show can be and how far you can reach to help people. And I'm going to be sort of in the background, although I won't be the person that you hear on the episodes. I will be in the background helping, to produce it and get it out, and still involved. And it still means a lot to me. And for the listeners that have trusted me over the past 150 episodes, and the families, especially, that have trusted me to share their stories with me, I can't thank you enough for your trust and for considering me to tell that story. I don't consider myself the world's best interviewer by any stretch, but people have chosen to talk to me, and I've done my best to honor them and their stories and their experiences. And I know that going forward, Eric is going to do the exact same thing. So I feel like I'm leaving this in very good hands.
Mike, thank you. You are totally an inspiration, and you've always been nothing but kind and generous with me. And so I'm very grateful for our friendship, and I'm grateful for this future partnership. I'm definitely looking forward to this. I feel very honored to be sitting here and, talking to your listeners, to now our listeners. And I look forward to bringing so much of a victim focus. I look forward to bringing an advocacy focus and an empathetic focus to the murder in my family. And I am beyond thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you. And everybody, be sure to tune in for this new, brand new episode in 2 weeks from now with Eric. And he's going to get the ball rolling, and hopefully it'll be the first of many families that he's able to help going forward. So everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder of My Family. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder of My Family, and I hope you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.